Textiles from Cemetery A. Textile material from the graves of Cemetery A in Naqlun was excavated between 1998 and 2016. Basically, the textiles are divided into typical funerary pieces like coffin, shrouds, body shrouds, pillows, and specifically burial tunics, and the regular dress textiles which the deceased wore in life, that is, tunics, shawls, caps, bonnets, headbands, turbans, trousers, and short pants, cloth belts. Three groups of textiles can be distinguished by state of preservation: practically intact pieces displaying the full dimensions, fragmentary pieces of known function but incomplete, and small fragments of textiles of indistinct function. Even in fragmentary condition, these textiles often provide important information. Most of the textiles were made of linen with ornaments executed mostly in silk. The most valuable fabrics are decorated with gold metal wrapped silk thread and cyproid gold thread. Plain weave was the most frequent technique, tapestry weave being also commonly encountered. The weaves include twill weave and satin weave also. The decoration on the burial shrouds was mostly embroidered. Raised brocade patterns were observed on the decorated tunics of everyday use. Velvet and lampas appear among the fabrics also. Analysis of the preserved textile material excavated from Cemetery A shows that most of the fabrics belonged to the lay population, but not only. What is the function of this textile from the Cemetery A? How can we tell? Secular clothing. Tunics were an integral part of the deceased's clothing. Three principal types of tunics can be distinguished among the garments excavated from burials in Naqlun. The first was a sleeveless type called a bag tunic. The bag-shaped tunic was a rectangular gore of fabric sewn together at the sides with slit left for the arms and the bateau-shaped neckline. The second, a straight-sleeved tunic. Most of the tunics for adults as well as children were of the galabia type. Made of linen in plain tabby, it was decorated with silk. Woolen tunics are also encountered, although these are few cases. Headgear has much more than simply a protective and fashionable function. It is a formidable marker of identity. Those seemingly quotidian or stylish lumps of fabric are very eloquent witnesses to nothing less than the structure of a society and how it was performed, perceived, and represented. The child's cap from grave T304 was used in Mamluk Egypt. The fabric is interlaced with cyproid gold strips of membrane coated with real gold foil, making it among the most expensive and desired fabric types in Egypt at this time. In the mid-13th century, cyproid thread was delivered by sea from Genoa to the port of Alexandria. This is confirmed by the treaty concluded in 1290 between Genoa and Sultan Qalawun. The geometric designs reflect medieval Islamic tastes. An unusual headgear was found in grave T324. Three other hats in museums collections have an identical form to the Naqlun headgear. Two perfectly presented hats in the Cleveland Museum of Art and the Victoria and Albert Museum. The Cleveland Museum places its head in Iran or Iraq, Buyid or Seljuk period. This identification certainly would have continued if not for the existence of third cup fragments with Arabic inscriptions from the Metropolitan Museum. The style of the inscriptions on these paper fragments is similar to Ayyubid, late Fatimid, or early Mamluk cursive scripts. The documents give a regional context and through their dates, a realistic terminus post quem for the production of the cap. The document written in the middle of the 11th century in Egypt. It therefore appears that on the basis the Naqlun cap can be dated to the late 11th or early 12th century. The dating of the Naqlun headgear is confirmed by a codex with a handwritten date of 1100 CE, found in the same grave, T 324. The Naqlun cap also contains paper with an inscription. The text was not read because most of an inscription is unavailable. It is located inside the headgear under the fabric. Boris Librens says that we might tentatively infer that the heads in Cleveland, London, and New York were luxurious and probably ceremonial variants of this military headgear, intended to be worn in court by the palace guard or during a parade rather than battle. In my opinion, this is an important topic for further research. Monastic dress. The analysis of the preserved textile material excavated from the cemetery A allows us to conclude that most of the cloths belong to the lay population. The clergy clothing was identifiable only in the fabric, had characteristic decoration features, crosses, prayers, inscriptions, or in the fabric, prayer inscriptions, or in the fabric had a cut that qualified it to the group of liturgical paraments. However, it cannot be ruled out that other, particularly undecorated clothing items belonged to the clergy also. Tunics. During the exploration of the cemetery on Combe A in 2000, several scraps of decorated woolen textiles were uncovered in grave T 165. In grave was a robe and shawl found to be decorated with Christian symbols and Coptic inscription. The burial was found disturbed. The woolen robe turned out to be sleeveless tunic of the bag-shaped type. It proved possible to establish its shape, full dimensions, and the pattern of the decoration. It was 148 centimeters long and 124 centimeters wide. Decorating the front of the tunic was a big 4-branch cross and bands of geometric decoration flanked by multi-branched color crosses and inscriptions in Coptic, identified as an excerpt from Psalm 46. This was most probably the grave of a diacon or priest. In the textiles collection of the Louvre, there is a tunic with an ornament resembling that of the Naqlun robe. The Coptic inscription on the sleeves gives the name of the owner, one monk called Apa Kolhi from the Naqluni monastery, Jebel el Naqlun. He was undoubtedly the person for whom the tunic had been made. Burial textile. An integral part of every burial in cemetery, cemetery A in Naqlun, linen shrouds were used both on coffins and as wrapping for the body deposited in a coffin on a bier or tried in the ground. Coffin shrouds were decorated with crosses, painted originally in red and now faded to an orange-yellow color. To judge by the patterns of crosses shrouds on the shrouds, the actual application of painted motifs occurred after the textile was in place on the coffin. Sometimes the shroud covered the sides of the box in addition to the top. As always, there are examples of coffin shroud decoration that go beyond the standard patterns. They were all made of a characteristic undyed fabric woven of unspun linen fibers. Any sewing that was required was done with the simplest basting stitches. Somebody's shrouds were impregnated, most likely with wax on one side. This was presumably intended as a way of dealing with rapid body decomposition common in the Egyptian climate. For the same reason, aromatic plants were placed as buckets on top of the corpses or under the head, or were used as pillow fillings. A small group of shrouds consisted of finely spun quality linen fabrics, richly decorated with silk in tapestry weave technique. Their presence in burials was presumably secondary, for they were textiles of everyday use, worn ordinarily as shawls. Typical grave furnishings included linen pillows placed under the head of the corpse, although they were hardly as common as the shrouds. They were encountered in approximately 10% of the examined burials. The filling of these pillows consisted of leaves and twigs of aromatic plants such as myrtle. Most pillows were made of plain linen with no decoration. A few had silk embroidery or brocaded woven silk thread ornament. Specifically, burial tunics found in tombs of men and women alike, these tunics appear to have been prepared exclusively for burial purposes. They are typically very big, although not every one of them, up to 163 centimeters in length, and very wide, up to 185 centimeters in the sleeveless type, which is commonly referred as bag-shaped. The sleeves on the sleeved type can reach even 80 centimeters in length. Taking these numbers into consideration, there can be no doubt that these tunics were never worn in life. Moreover, both types had a very simple cut with no effort whatsoever to fit it to the figure and size of the owner. Dating of fabrics. Determining the time of creation of textiles from cemetery A in Naqlun is based on several aspects. A. Textiles decoration. B. Types of fabric weaves. C. Inscriptions on fabrics. D. Archaeological context. The time period that has so far been outlined for cemetery A places it in the period of the Fatimid Caliphate, 909 to 1171 CE. The Ayyubid Caliphate places in the period of the Fatimid Caliphate and the Ayyubid Caliphate. One of the dating elements is design and color of fabrics, unfortunately not very precise. Fatimid and Ayyubid textiles. Many of the decorative bands found in Naqlun have Arabic and pseudo-Arabic inscriptions. They are part of the ornamental design and are mainly found in the thinner outer bands joining the central stripe, which bears medallions and plated bands. The medallions are filled with animals, either single or in pairs, such as hares, other quadruples, and birds. Even fabulous animals, or else with ornamental design. The medallions with the animals are a typical motif on Fatimid and Ayyubid tiras. The production of textiles was an important luxury industry in Egypt at the time. Inscribed textiles were highly valued in the early Islamic period and were produced until the 14th century in both caliphal and state-run public factories. Some inscriptions on fabrics allow for quite precise dating of weaving products. Textile fragment from T314 is a tiras of the Fatimid Caliph Al-Hakim Biramli Allah. The fabric is very loosely woven and very dark blue in color. One of textile came from an undisturbed tomb T174. It may contain the name of the Fatimid Caliph Al-Mustansir Billah, but misspelled. Shroud fragment from grave T292 is a tiras from the period after Al-Hakim. The beginning and end of the line is missing, and the name of the caliph is not preserved. But there is the title, Safi Amir Al-Mumimin, best friend of the commander of the faithful. This title was first given to the Wazir Al-Jarai, who was in office from 418 after Hijrah. That means 1027 CE, under Al-Hakim's son, the Fatimid Caliph Az-Zahir, and under his follower as Al-Mustansir Biallah until 436 after Hijrah, that means 1044 CE. Thus, the inscription in the dated is to be dated to between 1027 and 1044 CE. The grave furnishings may be a dating element also. The men's burial T324 had been richly furnished with 2 glass bottles still in their protective basket work, and a pen case with metal fittings and 2 sharpened reed pens, calamoi. Inside the coffin, there was also a codex. The codex contained the text of the Gospel of John written down in Coptic in year 493 of the Hijrah. That means around 1100 CE. On the last page of the codex contains a brief inscription in Arabic giving the name of the owner of the book, Juan Botros. The code determines the dating of the burial as well as the grave equipment, including fabrics. The coffin was wrapped in inscribed shroud and had leaves and flowers deposited on them. The man was richly robed in textiles of the tiras type with Arabic inscriptions, shawl, tunics, and cap. Mamluk textiles. During the Egyptian Mamluk Sultanate, the tiras production gradually broke down and eventually vanished. Drawlum weaving replaced tapestry weaving in the Mamluk period as more complicated fabrics and designs. Mamluk silks are generally woven on drawlooms. The drawloom introduced into Egypt sometime in the middle of the 13th century, facilitated the production and reproduction of complex designs, repeat patterns, and double and triple cloth. In terms of color, blue, brown, and ivory dominate. The most common patterns tend to be stripes, vertical and horizontal, ogival lattices, and undulating vines. Mamluk linen tunics from Cemetery A have silk stripes woven on a drawloom. The silk stripes sewn on the edges of the sleeves and around the neck opening. During the Mamluk period, the embroidery technique was developed. One of the best interpretations of Mamluk embroidery is Louisa Bellinger's technical analysis of fabrics. According to Bellinger, embroidery was a foreign technique brought to Egypt from the Far East as an easier and cheaper method of making silk patterns. The development of Egyptian embroidery is intimately tied up with producing inscriptions in textiles. Embroidery began to replace tapestry weaving for colored and inscriptional designs by the end of the Fatimid period and was more or less completed with the Mamluks. The most characteristic stitch used by Mamluk embroidery was the Holbein stitch, a sturdy, reversible, counted stitch that is most often associated with repeat patterns in blue. Several stitches also appeared with intentionally reproduced the effect of silk, such as the weaving, which intentionally reproduced the effect of silk, such as the weaving, and satin stitches. To the 14th centuries are attributed various abstract geometric motifs, including hooked axes, grid, the checkboard pattern, or hexagonal cartouches, rosettes, and pseudo-epigraphic motifs. Most of what was normally identified as Mamluk dates for the 14th century and includes embroideries with blue-dyed silk or linen. In the later Mamluk period can be placed the common angular S-shaped motif, hooked triangles, angular motifs on a ground of interlacing bands, and the preference for a marine blue-brown dye. Embroidered bands generally decorated the edges of garments and accented sleeve openings and collars. The Mamluks' preference for rigid geometry is evident. Distinctive features of fabric decoration and weaving techniques changing in the Mamluk period can be found in fabrics from Cemetery A in Naqlun. A detailed analysis of the fabrics indicates that the current dating horizon should be moved to the beginning of the Mamluk period. Conclusions. In recapitulation, the textiles originating from archaeological excavations in Naqlun necropole hold importance for costumeology studies, analysis of trade contracts as much as for a reconstruction of burial customs, or as a source on social, ethnic, and religious identity of the Egyptian provincial population in the Fatimid, Ayyubid, and Mamluk period. Considering that most of textiles in museum collections are of unknown provenance and are on the whole imprecisely dated, the significance of the extensive Naqlun set for research on textiles of the 11th-14th century from Egypt can hardly be underestimated. In 2023, over 800 fabrics were subjected to microscopic analysis. It was determined what raw materials were used to weave fabrics. The analysis confirmed that the majority of fabrics are made of linen and silk, and a few are made of cotton and wool. This research helps to understand the social status of Fayum population.